let us now take a look at what the offence of wrongful confinement has to say in the IPC. Now, so far as the offence of wrongful confinement is concerned, it's covered under Section 340. What does the section say? Section 340 provides as follows: whoever wrongfully restrains any person in such a manner as to prevent that person from proceeding beyond certain circumscribing limits is said wrongfully to confine that person. Now you would notice a structural difference between Section 339 and Section 340 of the Indian Penal Code. Whereas in the definition of wrongful restraint, you can see the element of volition in that the section says that voluntary obstruction is a necessary feature of the section. You don't find the usage of the word volition or voluntary in Section 340. Why would that be? And is volition a necessary factor under Section 340 as well, or is it just confined to the limits of Section 339? Well, volition is equally important in offences related to wrongful confinement under Section 340. As you would see, Section 340 makes use of the phrase wrongfully restrains. That means wrongful restraint is a necessary quotient, necessary element for wrongful confinement to happen in the first place. The minute we use the terms wrongful restraint or wrongfully restrains, the very idea of volition gets captured in the idea of wrongful restraint. So, what is the difference between wrongful restraint and wrongful confinement? As you would have understood in the first part of the lecture now, wrongful restraint is confined to the idea that access is not provided to an individual in a certain direction. It's denial of the provision of an access to move in a certain direction. Wrongful confinement, on the other hand, means that you do not allow a person to move beyond a fixed territory, beyond a fixed circumscribed limit. So as the word itself suggests, confinement is an understanding that you allow a person to enter into a certain area, but at the same time, you also confine the person to that limited area. So wrongful confinement necessarily has an element of wrongful restraint. On the other hand, every form of wrongful restraint is not necessarily a form of wrongful confinement. The following essential elements are made out from the analysis of Section 340. The accused must have committed a wrongful restraint within the meaning of Section 339. By such wrongful restraint, the victim would have been prevented from proceeding beyond certain circumscribing limits. Malice is not a necessary requirement for proving the offence of wrongful confinement. The time or period of confinement is also not a relevant point. It is only necessary to establish that a person was prevented from moving beyond a certain confinement or from moving beyond certain circumscribing limits. Once that is established, the offence of wrongful confinement can be committed. Now, the reason we don't take a look at malice is because there cannot be no justifiable reason for wrongful confinement. So, once you show the ingredients of wrongful restraint and then there is a confinement happening with the individual, we can say that the offence of wrongful confinement has been established. Now, wrongful confinement, as I have already told in the first part of the lecture, is also a form of tort in civil law. So it is otherwise known as false imprisonment, and the victim can institute civil and criminal proceedings both for the commission of this wrong. Now, in case of wrongful confinement, not only is the freedom of movement suspended by an act done by another person voluntarily, but also the liberty of the individual is abridged against the will of such individual. So it is necessary to understand that there is further curtailment of liberty. So if you were to pick between wrongful restraint and wrongful confinement on the ground of which would amount to a greater curtailment of liberty, it is wrongful confinement, because it comes with the idea that you circumscribe a person within certain limits. Now, it is important to understand the distinction between wrongful restraint and wrongful confinement. Wrongful restraint is a partial restraint on the person's personal liberty. It is less than wrongful confinement and doesn't require any limits or boundaries, and the person so obstructed can choose to take another direction. But wrongful confinement is an absolute or total restraint on the person's liberty. It includes the idea of wrongful restraint. There is delimitation of the movement, which is very necessary for this offense to take place. A person is either not allowed to move or is compelled to move against his wishes. After the first segment, it is now essential to discuss criminal force and assault, which is also part of this module. Sections 349 to 58 make various provisions for criminal force and assault. 349 defines force. What is, however, necessary for us to understand is section 350, which is criminal force. Force is anything that causes motion. And when we say criminal force, section 350 says, whoever intentionally uses force to any person without that person's consent uses that force with the knowledge that he is likely to cause injury, fear, or annoyance to that person is said to use criminal force to that other. Section 351 defines assault. Whoever makes any gesture, preparation with intention or knowledge that such gesture or preparation will cause any person present to apprehend that he is about to use criminal force on that person is said to commit an assault. Mere words do not amount to assault. Words in addition to gestures for even preparing for assault will amount to an assault. Section 352 provides punishment for assault. Section 353 says, assault to deter punishment from discharge of certain duties provides imprisonment for up to 2 years or fine or both. Section 354 deals with assault to woman to outrage her modesty. It provides for imprisonment up to 2 years along with fine or with both. Section 357 provides for assault to commit theft. Section 357 deals with assault to wrongfully confine a person, and Section 358 deals with assault on grave provocation. Now, what is the difference between assault, force, and criminal force? Assault is defined under Section 351 of IPC. In an assault, a physical contact is not a necessary element. An attempt to commit force or criminal force may also capture the idea of assault. Assault may not include force or criminal force. An overt act indicating an immediate intent to commit force or criminal force can also amount to assault. In addition to the capacity of carrying out the intention into effect, to constitute an assault, the person being assaulted must, on reasonable grounds, believe that the person assaulting has the ability to actually use the force or criminal force so attempted by him. It is lesser in degree in comparison to criminal force. On the other hand, force in itself is not an offense. Criminal force, however, is captured under Section 350 of the IPC. Criminal force is the force which is used intentionally to any person to cause injury or causing fear or annoyance. It includes assault. Physical contact exists in the use of criminal force. Assault is completed by actual use of means and ability in criminal force. Now, no belief of ability is needed in criminal force. To prove criminal force, some of the following ingredients are necessary. The accused used force on the complainant. Such use of force was intentional. The complainant's consent was not taken. It was in order to commit an offense or with the intention of causing knowledge of the likelihood of causing injury, fear, or annoyance to the aggrieved. That he received no grave and sudden provocation from the complainant. Assault is in the preparatory acts which cause apprehension for the use of force or criminal force. Mere apprehension and no physical contact are what characterize assault as a different ingredient. Now, to prove assault, some other ingredients are also necessary. That an accused made a gesture or preparation to use criminal force, such gesture was made in the presence of the complainant, and that the gesture or preparation caused an apprehension in the mind of the victim. This is what we learned right now about assault and criminal force. Now, in the module, we discussed various aspects of wrongful restraint, wrongful confinement, assault, and criminal force. In order to understand properly each of these terms, it's essential to take a look once again at some of the essential elements. Wrongful restraint and wrongful confinement are important concepts, both of which are linked with each other. Always remember that wrongful confinement includes within itself the idea of wrongful restraint. But wrongful restraint, every form of wrongful restraint rather, is not necessarily a form of wrongful confinement. Wrongful confinement is of much greater degree in comparison to wrongful restraint. On the other hand, assault and criminal force vary from each other in terms of the nature and their gravity. In an assault, mere showing of a gesture is sufficient to constitute an assault. For criminal force, there has to be a criminal intention or an intention to use force for satisfying a criminal objective, which have been mentioned in the IPC. With this, I would like to conclude. Thank you.